Pemi dikzo ki ngwene, ume lamki suju shiru sun jana shungla pyoki, mawa neba kor boduru jangshe, yu ime ki tablam shik nye be rewa jang shiba tang, yangwe su jana shungla 매직 매도기 논주 시주 참조 요상 용외 꾸일때기 고급 용례 지기 여진 대양 편주 전염탕 지동 저주 그게 이편 윤회 소바 제기 사망주 고도로 장시 자교를 저지 앙사르여 마존니 그 난게 뿐다츠 라왕기 진짜바 인답 그게 간요 장세 맞춤 바 여성기 별명 오자도르당 별명 또다 촉점기 독점시주 락다르 제신바 뭐된 남 각종 소소 랑리宣예즈 배 표den당 표den 당란 수도 내규 랑완 유주 카기 저조당 시숑 로든 데네 강 산유 유람카 제 para tabi şude cumce nüden çongbe tabzu tada la bebung çagyoyin yaşongi tukzup sicu jidarı gönang şişu gündan nambe rang mirik çürik ta geyik yukum şilukçe yartan koru yartan koruyu sungyop to lodop gümeki gen kuru len shimbani zenju bimi simshu ge gyabden zo de yin kong nambe gen kuru she shimba tendi zho mi henge ge tokdan shik yin la yana ge zazim tang tunba shik yang yinba ten yingdo gyume ge to ne rang miri ge ngo jenyar ge tokdan zune to bebong gyunsin nangge tang chenjur bimi nam ne kyang gyashung ge pyo ge rikshung zador tong shimbe 시주 뭐 심베 토네 랑 미리기 뭐 제냐를 테 굴즈 나라게 거베 여기 수교예 회민남 신유도 때 신유 전주도 농어 대다 링 주노 공사 장군 정부초 우지 남대원 지주 뇌된 지조 이야기기 중재 부든 중 여바 상매 전유도 야로슈 대배 농어 축출하 린센주 부민남라 튼주 로근 난게 야갈 의세 용기 쇠 자제 제가 파당 그들이 작교로 관남라 고급 비규 인은의 거린 제된 수구유 어리 용기 예람 믹스에 부든 제두바 꽃나무로 독재체 수교당 나서 튼조 예갑 내 벽이 뭐 로규 내밥라 원진단 대신 벽에 간요 셀레 우메 남기 수주 땡조기 약교로 용외 레와차싱이요 대신도 예조 조와 미 톱단 현조기 소조 미셸 배칠렛 신당아베 낭 신장 속 산에 카도 시고르 해저를 독배 벽구도양 예배 낭답 용배 벽의 수구요 랑로 니슈 저주 인배 벽이 셰바 착진 생활 누부 라기 친다 예배 제 니슈 생활인 해설 랑로 메세 땅대 대중 교회 내주 유람카도 전도장 여성기 담자 생활기 홍대순 지자당 개민기 내주 락선 맞춤 나주宣예비를 촉성 투지 젠지 예매 낭외 겸유 수교당 회당 회미 내당 인자 기급들 학상 제인기 최소 쇼로 인나 회 지벌 섭답 매배 경군 전부 인답 랑장 회미츠 최소 라제 제제기 권에 밀제 뉴제 용조 그 인시 미리기 시슈 샹데 슈테 레게 퓨트베 베그 참직도 수교인 다른게 투젠 디양 유크레인라 진주 내 중외 유주기 마그룸 독배워 내 송제 수신 여진 유생 대왕기 대종수 유와 남라 양해 제된다 매견 보관 남당 센저도 결외 유그린 미망 사야니 학라 동세 냠게 슈규당 삼린들 랑종기 내얌 중족당 미스 서베 유생기 까니 대리 강교 상내 저와 민남 시대 박배당 참제 대기 빼라 농수주업에 선대 면남 수교인 타든 진호 공사 겸군 정부초 구제 시합에 땡직 투시 행기 주바당 배든 된다 유도 세베 면든체 가샤기 지로니 돈이 수산이 다와순배 세주라 투체나
아니 미망하는 게 동계 나기 거치 노쇼 미워쇼다 바보 아노예 자세리 라마 나를 생에 다주 나조예 자세리 라마 나를 생에 다주 지도야 주마들어 이신로도 시계금이 도기니 양글제보 공사이신로도 시계금이 도기니 나오세 마라 생애가마 백에다그 도기 예길리마라쇼 생애가마
뱀랜드 토도 되시나?
namla samala ni thamane tashi tele shu be digami ma be zenji chene thabar milo thukju resum shibu chiye thabar mita Tabar mita gada tukju resum kulu mese pune kulu mese de pune changme tenso shuwe to ngazo changna ning ngazo changme kosa kyamgu chenpo choki kagon shi ume lamki hone pyoki denta nyodo sebe mende shugiyo 타된 데라 공사경근 전부 쳐 고제 샤베 개가 된지 독이 신든 흥기 주베 주바타 시제 비민 냠som 용의 면들제 회가로
그래서 우리 단다 대검 최시간의 그 접치 와서 소소 빠상하면 소소
hello 안달데 페베 산에 초과하기 길에 넘버 2에 미만 상말라 참르다시데 슈비에 다른 예모디 중ren당 다른 데르 좀네 저 야나라 탑지기 랭귀 딘다시 पेगेदे रोपसन शिवाइना थारे नेमो दिन एचबे मेलो ठुजु रेसंगी यांगेते चिरजिदों गुल्या니 माबजु नगुले दावासमे छेचु इमो पेगे गे살 हासा 파가 마부 포라 포달레 딘타네 최소 미만남라 마제 삼바치딩기 람네 자우 야숑라 시웨 모게 쳔모테 페미 로한 겔랑삼 심지 대전대 총화래 미마 겔란데 부시 총화태양 자오 야숑기 배사 젠송다 페밀라 톱제기 쇠탑 매베 젠와다 냐네 체베 경쟁기 총화 매매고 버시래 대가나시 녜벨로시 나라 삼무지타와이나 찔로 니동 게로 최송 강산네 하장 시대체베 사실 시계지모 좋아다 찔로 니동 고일러 나와 니베 체니쇼 짜고네 송네 대타대 파도 배나네 페미 갸당압중 압게기란르 메세다 치조네 집에 캔든 대타대 파도 페미 갸다 투주 하잠기 배게가 땅 메레기 체도 꼴레 메셰도 피워래 라버도 니마 카싱 면에 감 나추네 입에 Ranglo Ningachen, Posa Chunju, Peggy Shepherd, Pao Tao Nulaki, Pojang Podale Duntane, Rangle Mesegi, De Don Chimbe, Yigo Nizu, Tevadi, Dinzu Karitsugi Sevena, Chochini, Tutadaina, Penala, draw me top down Mevatan, she lived in the nun, she lived in the Mrs. Mutene, Dao Yashongi, Laone, Nachu Semenyana, Yoshima Tsingi Yavatare, Cho Shishin is Sama, Penangi, Pemitse, Shumegi, Nindota, Zemegi Lagi, Tun Namian, Dao Yashola Gomigurua, Pemiriki, Tabse, Gunyon Chigieva, and Centugire. Manaso Inayang, 다른 뒤를 좀네 자오 야숑라 모게 치기요래 이나양 백이 탑재 링기디 친다 수비 최초 니모 치고 배겨야 다시다 남게 라니 기갑쇼에 탑재 바시 임바 제도게나 자원이니 되게요 말에 말한서 깨사다 살론 치사 가와 이난다 뱀에 이마 잠기 기가 메행기 미리시다 란사 랑이다 실리핀데 체도 Peggy Zadin Tabzebashi Imba, the Geminoa. Sengi Kidan, Ruveting, Namian Cheng, Goya de Shinducation Bure. Teranashi, Dao Yana, Kazeto Shichananda. Kazet Dunseta, Senecha Inaya, Shengi Rogyo Konalara, Mimadache. Marase, Petsebi Ningdote, Kodo Chane. Namshi Rangsa Rangdatan, Konsa Kyangyo Buche, Pedo Dende Shune, Shije Henzo Machungi Pardo, Tabzula, Sanjo, Miche Beche, Chesem Tembo, Gure Sangidu. Chojene Samotana, Zenjanala, Mitan Yure, Yinaya, Mazula, Twindil Dan, Tabzugi Nindo Viena, Shensula Meve, Lapchengi Uti, Chino Konsa. Kyangyo Buche Tabu, she Manzolo Yudu, Miguel, Peggy Denda Sene, Shijin Yamzo Yove Nimashi, Chalgere Sambe, Sangola Tukilda, Nindo, Pamashi Yongre Sambidu. They ended Donna, Manzo Chame Tabar, Miriki Chedo, Luzo Longe da Chiba, Lutan Mankingi, Pau the Pamonamgi, Sheljemta, Tugon Lola Mikiwatan, she lived in Namgi, Rewata, Ichi, Milagveche. 최선 도서 치지당 니슈 냠봉기 탑제 경경 남 샤세 르다 라세 뽕라 토겨 치시 페랑제 라서 마토기 파도 페덴 탑제 참조 미체베 최선당 님도 나면 예주기 요 말에 인다이 완전히 셈베 님도 타세네 유에 리규직당 메비 샤겐 센데라 룸베 미리기 탑제 바 시린 Manzoni, Manzo Payla, Penny Mansi, Pegalo, 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 Pegalo.
Sunday should not only Paul Tala.
Gongro Go Shingon to pay the woman, Joan, Shirazu, Tenzi Janzo, Shamba, Sadepa, the Tenji Chu. Terina, Pejako, Mariki. Tena, Logi Dembegi, Nimoji, Yero. Logi Dembegi, Nimoji, Re. Jana Mobi, Sishungi, Mota Chimegi, Chutu Gaja Shigane, Chutu Gajanga Nagi Par Drapi Magi, Tenisheniga, and Pesa Yod Tenzu Shebre. Di Mate Bigi Marato Lana Meva Uti Chino Consa Tangi Chimbucho, Goko Luti. Shayag, Tapsi Yug Satuniga, Ani Janal Mala, Chonda no Gorasavada, Mate, Ani, Nato Patul, Trima Yabuchi, 고고 루지 당네 그 야나래 덴디 슈티 그아 다시 육 짜주 돈에 매버서야 그 차시를 봐 던데 인사 아니 가로도 배면 동상 몽보 아니 배기 자사 하살러 아니 장기는 뭐지 주사 농블링크 그 어디는 타고네 아니 배면 동상 몽보랑네 그 자마 배네 그파 주고요 배 라와랑제 자와 땡땡 자서 끝을 쳐는 데만 쇼제니까 배가 하족이 수지 제버려 뒤에 때는 그 자마마의 그 배면 동상 몽보 대세 당네 그 배면 동상 몽보真的就把当배면 동상 몽보 안에 땡종을 내지 가버려 전대 인상 나로도 드리 그 네몬데 주도 그자 나저 나글로 다 소배 그 진짜다 하저고 개체지 잡아지 롤지 대마레 해야 돼 니레스 자나 마셔 그 던지 가는 가서 누구 쳐보지 제대로 뒤 마태 베기 나로도 배봐 배제를 맞지 또 셔베가 단다 고시로 잠세 우베게 나로도 총바라 냥아바 종루바 가서 참여를 줘 장가티는 뛰어요 말아 던데지 그 사자 레디오르스 니도 그네 전에 뱀 토마 우도 자생 거니까 라네 잡은 고주니까 끌리메다 돈 단다 받아 로아 세워 놓고 받아 메다 돈이 자도 주지 리져봐 차고요 이제 배바체도 우투 자생이 죽어라 자매 그 가서로 누두 나제 또야 수체잖아 그래 어떤 데서 나라 좀 장가름 버치고 소는 시가 뱀은 머리 그러는 게요라 처음엔 게 키고요라 라 기니 노바치가 나좀 뱀은 사야 주기 끝속 실로라 라온 농발이 요라 타마 탱고고요라 니마 따바를 제다 요마도는 뒤진 뒤진을 떼니까 참아 패 고고요라 패로 지에서는 주야인 와 어야 단단 년단 양심아 감 장고를 소재 갖고 피트 거쳐 고고 다버지 또 마세 장고 개백 나로도 백 치다 르쇼 냐타 제사게 롭조 제사게 롭라또 세시 개백 대단 난시 그 롭라자지 디토로 디 마세백 골로 라 대단 난시 그 베베 그 깨도 이기 당제 제사게 롭라자지 디토베어르 배 나로는 사지 먹고 니바트 자나 송기 아니 제대로 요레스 근데 나도 남야 제디오 말에 제 얘가 말에 제 로그 말에 뱀은 사야니도 제가 지금 주설로 땅 잡으러 배사대 그 치드 내제는 나도 라타고 말해 딱 같이 이해는 뒤로 팬데는 늦게라네 그 말을 가르쳐 그러고 직세셔라 내리라 차려고 데리 마요니 뒤지게 마음발을 터지시 머리 그르긴 게그거를 저래 저절로 땅고 말아 니마 정년도 내려하니까서는 주제 땅은 패로치 있으니 뒤슈야이 나로 좀 단단 나처럼 넣지니 라나매배 저는 고사 장기 전부 좀 좀벌리는 매바지 렌디지 요러 나로 좀 도다 찌드드니까 누가 때문에는 때야기 나처럼 찾지요래 때야기 나처럼 뽑아요래 때제 라자요래 넣지니요래 야를 남구고래 그럼 단단 가서 하고바지는 유고와도 러시아니 간데두고도 유고가 간데치고도 포세니고 뭐를 두비에나 가서 하니까 소소 잡고 그 땡달라 소소로 땅게 예시고 땅 가서 뢰 땅마 더 놀라 나좀 뒤에 건드려 체제 증리지다 담아 패고 그라 배는 두니에 이제 같이 냠고요라 라 나라 나한테는 배니 용조해 까도 너는 용조해 라 근데서 남야 제니가 말해 했으니 뒤수에 他毛不去说明呢，有这出来的是吧？他们给照顾个人啊，做什么？真的是，俺那他对的了，就是公司讲给全部做，可是家等把的，别个等他年的才把说，别家喽，别家喽，别让这什么耶，家里别你爬出去，不见了。
China! China out of Tibet now! China out of Tibet now! Stop the killing! Stop the mining! Stop the torture! Release the political prisoners now! Release the Benson Lama now! Release the Benson
Shame on CCP! Shame on CCP! China, China,
Hello, hello.
China!
이만 남았 거냐 페르지다. 니 몸을 지키는데. 경기민데 가는 게 야티스 페르지다. 결론이 굳이.
When? When? Long live! Long live! Long live! Release the political prisoners now! Release the political prisoners now! Release the political prisoners now! Release Shut Up Ghetto now! Release Shut Up Ghetto now! Release Anya Sendrak now! We will! We will! We will! We will! Free Tibet! Free Tibet! Free Tibet! Free Tibet! China to Tibet now! China to Tibet now! Stop the torture! Stop the mining! Stop the genocide! Stop the killing! China to Tibet now! China to Tibet now! And when? When? Learning Tibetan is not a crime. Learning Tibetan. Learning Tibetan. Tibetans united will never be defeated. Tibetans united will never be defeated. The Tibetans united will never be defeated. The Tibetans united will never be defeated. 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 Long live! Long live! Long live! Long live!
Good afternoon, everyone who's gathered here today. On behalf of all the Tibetans all around the world, I'd like to thank everyone who's here to support our cause and to continue to rise up with us. Today we gather here to commemorate the 63 years of Uprising Day, remembering the lives lost on March 10th, 1959. The tragic 168 Tibetans that have self-immolated to highlight the oppression faced by Tibetans under the cruel Chinese occupation, and remembering our brothers and sisters in Tibet who continue to endure torture and cruelty since 6 decades of illegal Chinese occupation. 63 years ago on this day, March 10, 1959, tens and thousands of Tibetans rose up to protest against the Chinese illegal occupation of Tibet. Since then, the Communist China has brutally cracked down across Tibet, committing grave crime against humanity, destroying our culture and religion, and making every attempt to wipe out our identity. During this protest, thousands of Tibetans died, thousands more were sent to concentration camps, and sacred religious sites were destroyed. That was 63 years ago. But the Communist China continues to destroy our religious sites, continue to torture and slaughter Tibetans in our homeland, stripping them of basic human rights and committing cultural genocide on a mass scale. I would like to implore with Canada and other nations of the world to stand up for what is right and just. Rise up with Tibetans and join us to show Communist China that we will no longer be silenced. I also have an important message for the Communist China on this important day. We rose up on March 10, 1959, and we will continue to rise every day against you. We will continue to protest your inhumane treatment of our brothers and sisters in Tibet. We will not rest until justice is served. We will not rest until we see His Holiness Dalai Lama return to his rightful place, Tibet, our homeland. The more you oppress us, the higher we will rise. The more you silence us, the louder we will roar. Pergelo! 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 We hope and pray for a swift rebirth into our homeland in Tibet. Okay, I'd like to request Putila Karkoche to say a few words.
Tujina, 당봉 백인의 체크시 주시는데 I'm just going to read a statement in Tibetan first, and then we'll share my remarks in English. Namalenge samala jisle, tharing nimodi, nima, shenda manda, mazu pepa son suda ji yin, kabala yone, mazu rerela, nima di, nega chimbo chiktang, nganzo je matue nima chikcha degi yore. Di yindu tharing dela, Toronto mimang mabu pedu, ay changalo langa yin tabo tuju sheshugini. Perangzi, the Gana showe, lo tuju raksumkowe, sumchu tiji chagi yore. Ningaranzo changme, semla kengoya kechimbuchi tang, karishuna, nganzo tabzuti, tabdeta, kimse demba tabzuchikre. Pergi nenzu di, demba tenjuchi nenzu, yimba yendi, ngaranzo changme, samlo chikdang, doksa chikdi chene, pedang tenda seyala, simshuk machakpa chene, bezu chegogi yore. Kechishu chik, pe nanglo la yepe, pemi, simshuk chembu kene, nganzo, sinjur la yepe, mima la, rewa chembu chenangi yore. Di yindu, nganzo changme, suso tenda chikbo membe, 고급 카디라나 인정 카디라직 라네 회당 회기 대변 누기시에 개주부 동기도 아니 타마딜라 상매 후다 받은 나야당 수수 배바 임배 모 디말라 바체 제네 대고기 전부 개주부 차게도 나가 나시 상월로 진제 당 예방 매배 돈에 학파도 독사질이 쉬니 나랑원의 라와당 멜람슈기에. Today we are gathered to mark 63rd anniversary of the 1959 uprising. 63 years of illegal occupation of China by China of Tibet. And every day, but especially on March 10th, I am reminded of the strength of the Tibetan people. By your presence here today, and with Tibetans all around the world commemorating March 10th, we are showing to the Chinese government and to the world that the Tibetan resistance lives on. The Tibetan struggle continues. Today here in Toronto, I'm heartened to see so many people, particularly young people, the next generation, who is going to continue our struggle. And we know that this resistance continues inside Tibet. Tibetans inside Tibet are doing everything they can every day to assert their Tibetan identity, to speak Tibetan language, to preserve Tibetan culture, and to be proud of who they are as Tibetans. And when I think about the Tibetans inside Tibet, I am reminded of most recently Tsawang Mobula, the most recent self-immolation, 168th person to self-immolate inside Tibet. Now let's take a moment to think about Tsawang Mobula, 25 years old, a beloved musician, popular singer. I mean, all of us have watched his videos and we love him. A talented young person who had a bright future ahead of him. This is his picture here. But what we may forget is that Tsongla, at 25 years old, has never, ever known a life in Tibet that was not under occupation. He has never known what it is like to live in a free Tibet. But he knows that it is possible. And he knows that he should be part of something to bring attention to the Tibetan cause, which is why he made the ultimate sacrifice of self-immolating to bring attention to the Tibetan cause. And I ask all of you today to make sure that we never forget the sacrifices that have been made by Tibetans, and to make sure that his death is not just another number that we get used to. We cannot let any more young Tibetans lose their life in this fight. So us as Tibetans outside of Tibet, let us do everything we can to ensure that we are fighting every day for our Tibet. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to request former Senator Constantino.
Wow. I'm just reflecting as we were walking that in 1990 I had an interesting experience. I'm being known as a bit of a crazy man who likes to walk mountains. And we were walking to the Everest Base Camp with a group of organized by the Sierra Club, and we walked through Tibet. The effect that it's had hasn't changed. It hasn't changed because of what Bhutto was saying, because I think very little has changed since then. I knew nothing about Tibet or Tibetans, and I will recall the story of the most poignant moment of this trip for those of you who haven't heard it before. We were in the Jokang Monastery, and a group of folks, and besides me was an American lady, and as we were admiring the monastery, a piece of paper was put into my hand. And I looked, the lady, part of the group, took the piece of paper, and I looked, and there was a young man that cowered, afraid, fearful. And the American lady started to cry. And she said, it's a plea for help. She said, the letter was in English, this paper was in English, and she said, he wants us to tell the world what we have seen. That piece of paper is framed and is hanging at the Tibetan Cultural Center somewhere as a memento. And the reason I mention that is because although, how many, 32 years have gone by? Not much has changed in Tibet since then, and it is shameful. And I've stood here pretty well every year, sometimes more than once, and indeed sometimes I've stood here for other causes as well. The Uyghurs, the Hong Kong folks, and so forth. And it is still, for someone who's lived a long life, I can't understand why China continues to oppress its people, or a lot of its people. So I'm here really to support Bhutila, support every one of you and to do whatever I can to continue to shine a light on the injustices, shine a light on the horrible things that are happening under the Communist Party of China. And I want to say something that I said at another event a couple of days ago. We should not criticize the Chinese people because most of the Chinese people are also victims. This is just the Communist Chinese Party who control everything and indeed are committing atrocious crimes against humanity to this day. And it is to come here and add my love, affection, and support to each and every one of you, and to all those still in Tibet, and all of my friends in Dharamsala and in India that I've been to many, many times. And make sure that you understand that I'm not alone. There's millions and millions of people that will continue to support you until justice is done. And it is very shameful that not enough is being done about this. And indeed, I have been critical of the United Nations in many, many areas, including this one. I'm sorry to use inappropriate words, but I publicly said that I think the United Nations is now inhabited by prostitutes. And there are other things that can be done. There are other ways of raising the issues. I have had the opportunity of meeting His Holiness a number of times, and I've been at these gatherings for a long, long time now. It's over 30 years that I started this. And I want to commit to you that I will continue as long as there's breath in me, that I will continue to support your cause and be here to stand with you, and indeed, if necessary, stand in front of you. Now, let me just make one brief comment that is, I think, pertinent today. There's something happening as we speak in the world that is not much different, and that is the situation in Ukraine. The situation in Ukraine is very much similar to what the situation has been for the Tibetans and others, and we should also think and pray for them as well, and hand ourselves or give us a hand to them whenever we can, to have the opportunity to say to those inhuman or subhuman beings that are continuing to commit these atrocious crimes in the world, we're still here to fight you. We'll do whatever the hell we have to and give up our lives, as many Ukrainians are doing today, to try to stop you. And eventually, we will succeed. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator, for your continued support. Next, I'd like to request Guest Officer La from CTU to say a few words.
Dari daga pewegi very mango shoji ngarazu de mixeg nimudi sungushiba dosje lega shaje pesha denia aningazu de kuri shungegi chobanagi sabshu de angdo de tuchana shueyi tana yage park tel gi zegutol ya ani ye pegetol ya dosje tamshi shu simbai chezan ding du zamba tatande 다리 현재 망고쇼 집회샤 안다가는 시기 시계 미나 가시 도스도 저한테 인도 잠발이야 다탄데 이지토네 담시 슈초와 슈웨이 Today 10th March is an unforgettable day for the people of Tibet. 63 years ago on this day, the peace and justice-loving people of Tibet staged a peaceful uprising against the Chinese occupation of our country. To them, the brave men and women of Tibet who have sacrificed their lives for the spiritual and political cause of Tibet, I pay my tribute. Similarly, I extend my gratefulness to the courageous and innocent people in Tibet who continue to suffer persecution and repression especially the 168 great men and women who sacrificed their life through self-immolation. The Chinese government has implemented a number of policies and campaigns in Tibet with the ultimate aim of Sinicizing our country. Anti-rebellion campaign, class struggle, cultural revolution, collectivization, liberalization, economic development, strike hard, mass resettlement of nomads, restriction of the use of Tibetan language as medium of communication and instruction, and the Western Development Program are some of them. These campaigns and policies have brought unending suffering and hardship to the Tibetans, 3 generations of whom have lived under the Chinese rule. However, their faith in His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the determination to toil for the cause of Tibet have remained undiminished. Their sacrifice and courage will remain an indestructible milestone in the history of Tibet. We, the Tibetans in exile, pay our respect to them. We know that although physically they live in Tibet, their heart is in Dharamsala and with His Holiness. Following the guidance of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Tibetans in Tibet and exile have consistently conducted our freedom struggle on the plane of non-violence, beleaguered as the world today is by the acts of violence and terrorism. More and more people are beginning to recognize and appreciate the fact that violence is not the answer to the problems of violence. At the time like this, our non-struggle and non-violent struggle becomes all the more pertinent, for it serves as an example of peaceful conflict resolution for the whole world. Needless to say that it will go down in the world history as Tibet's most important contribution. It is unfortunate that a small number of narrow-minded Tibetans in exile community go out of their way to mix petty personal differences with the issue relating to our national interests. In doing so, they foment factional infighting, thus undermining the unity of Tibetans. As a matter of fact, it is the emotion of attachment and hatred that drives their action. Worse still, our adversary manipulates the action of these individuals to spread rumors and create estrangement in our community. Using our wisdom to discriminate between the right and the wrong, we should be able to see through such insidious designs. I take this opportunity to call upon all Tibetans to work for our unity and to see to it that we do not mix personal differences with the issues relating to our national interests. For too long, the international community has underestimated the gravity and urgency of the plight of Tibetan people. To a certain extent, today's dramatic worsening of situation inside Tibet and China's continued aggressive geopolitics is clearly a consequence of negligence of Tibetan issue by the international community. If the international community wishes China to become a responsible stakeholder of the world community, then it must stop pursuing the failed policy of appeasement and taking the line of the least resistance in dealing with the dictatorial regimes in China. It is time to stop continuing to spoil the Chinese leader out of political expediency, and it is time to stand up for your principles and values. Do not let the sensitivity of the Chinese leadership dictate how you deal with China on human rights, democracy, and rule of law. Do not let the Chinese leadership discredit and corrupt your own principles and values through cohesive diplomacy. The world needs Canada to play a leading role in the defense, protection, and promotion of human rights. At the core of China's spirit is the fundamental belief in the inherent in equality and in dignity. So Canada must stand with all the people who suffer under the Chinese occupation. It is therefore important that this spirit of Canada does not halt at the borders of Canada. The oppressed people around the world needs our commitment and dedication to these values beyond the shores of our great nation. Let us therefore call on Canada to do not shirk the responsibility of standing up against the dictatorship of this new 21st century. It is time for Canada to stand up against Chinese bullying and to stand in solidarity with the Tibetans and other people who are dying for the cause of freedom. And it is time for Canada to stand in solidarity with Chinese defenders of human rights and advocate for the democracy and the rule of law, who are the vanguards of tomorrow's China. Canada is an important leading member of the international community. As such, she can be as much a player as well as a facilitator in the quest for a just and peaceful resolution of the issue of Tibet. The signal she sends to help determine whether the parties involved move forward towards dialogue and peaceful conflict resolution or towards deepening confrontation marked by increasing repression and resistance. Today's gathering of thousands of free citizens of Canada for a common purpose and with a common message on Tibet is a powerful display of people's power and sends a very clear and strong message to the Chinese government as well as leaders of the Canadian government. For us Tibetan, this is also an occasion to express to our friends from all over the world our sincere and deep appreciation and gratitude for your sympathy, support, and solidarity. Our friends from all over the world and we Tibetans have experienced together many twists and turns in the epic freedom struggle of the Tibetan people. The past has been a challenging time, testing our endurance and commitment and the strength of our solidarity and friendship. There is no doubt in my heart that the change will come in Tibet. This change will come by the power of truth and by the strength and force of the resolve and aspiration of the Tibetan people, and by the power of solidarity and support from people across the world committed to human solidarity and the values of nonviolence, peace, and justice. The time of the cause for the free Tibet will come and will prevail. It is the cause on the side of the truth and justice, and of course on the right side of history. Finally, I would like to wish His Holiness could soon return to Tibet and may truth prevail and bring freedom to Tibet. Pögelo! 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 Pögelo!
Thank you, Isala. Now we will sing a Nimal Lonely song led by Next, I'd like to request Tensi Chuing from SFG to say a few words.
As Tibetans from stolen land, I want to pay respects to the original caretakers of this land. Where I live in Tikranto, the land has been governed by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant and includes the following nations: the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, the Huron-Wendat, and more recently, the Mississaugas of the Credit River. The indigenous peoples of Turtle Island are still thriving on this land, and I am grateful to have a home here. I also commit myself to continue to unlearn and decolonize spaces that I occupy and work in solidarity with the indigenous peoples in their struggle. Tashidele, my name is Tenzin Chuing, and I'm a member of Students for a Free Tibet Canada. We're gathered here today to commemorate the uprising of 1959, a day of great significance in our history. Having said this, we must remember, respect, honor all those who have sacrificed their lives and dedicated their commitment defending Tibet's freedom and independence. The Tibetan women, men, nomads, monks, and nuns came out on the streets of Lhasa on this very day in 1959 with the belief to fight an evil and illegal occupation and stood firm against the Communist Chinese and the People's Liberation Army. We lost thousands of brothers and sisters as peaceful protesters were ruthlessly shot at fighting for basic human rights, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of expression, and freedom to assemble. These rights continue to be denied, and the stranglehold of the CCP in Tibet has increased tenfold. Therefore, as we have been commemorating this day since 1959, we once again stand here today for the 63rd time. We once again pay our deepest respect and our homage to our Tibetan brothers and sisters who lost their lives not only on that day, but ever since the illegal occupation through various forms of protest to this day. Taewang Norbu, a young Tibetan artist, was one of the most recent to have self-immolated as one of the highest forms of protest for freedom against the illegal occupation of Tibet. The number of self-immolations today have reached a staggering 168 people, and their sacrifices will not go unnoticed. Just a few days ago, we celebrated Losar, our Tibetan New Year, with great pomp and show. It is more important to show up for days like today and pay tribute to our freedom fighters and remind ourselves that we have a country to reclaim. As a community in exile, we need to stay resolute, united, and have a lot to do to make enough noise and keep putting pressure on the Chinese government and force them to move forward and resolve the reoccurring injustices in Tibet. We vow to continue the path to freedom, keep our culture alive, resist and show solidarity with Tibetan people inside Tibet until we are one day able to go back to a free Tibet. Pegelo! Pegelo! Pegelo!
Thank you. Next, I'd like to request Sheng Shu, Vice President of Federations for Democratic China, to say a few words.
We all know and see the war that Putin launched in Ukraine against Ukrainian people. And we are very sad, very angry, very worried, and we pray for the Ukrainian people. And at the same time, I want to remind the world one more time. The Chinese Communist regime started the war in Tibet 63 years ago, and it's never been ended. Just like it started the war to Uyghur people, to Mongolian people, to Chinese people 73 years ago, and it's never been ended. And because the killing is continually to today. And also I want to remind that the Chinese communist regime is a common enemy to humankind. Just to give you a few examples. The CCP is trying to destroy the history, the language, the culture, the temples, the beliefs, everything they think is not accurate to the CCP's benefits in Tibet. It has been lost until today, never ended. And also, it caused 158 Tibetans has been self-immolated. And the last was the young man, the singer, gave his life to his belief. And the whole world even cannot do nothing. That is a shame. And also, we know that the Chinese Communist has been established the very new, the very modern concentration camps in Xinjiang, in East Turkestan. Millions of people locked up in the concentration camps. But it's going on every day. And also the very, very unique criminal, evil criminal harvesting of live organs. It's been decades from Falun Gong practitioners, from political prisoners, and from anyone they think is worse for them to take the organ. And so the CCP enemy is the enemy to us, to every of us. And I want to see that the Tibetans' resistance movement against the Chinese Communist regime is
the longest, strongest, and the most influential movement. And I do believe that the Tibetans' resistance movement make history. And each one of you, all of you, are heroes. And you are going to be part of the great history to be remembered and to be respected by the next generation and the next generation. And so we need to stay in solidarity, to try our best overthrow the Chinese communist regime as soon as we can. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Chancellor. Next one, I'm going to request Geto Villa again for the Densimelum.
He 자매배 물고 주시 순대 가대라 주백의 사유와니 곳을 배다된 지사스라비네 제배는 수원의 반대 가와야 다두 백개 보나 구제군대 구제교와주 돌아고 모제레 시와기 세계계획 제와간제시 용서까지 멸락간제배 제사장의 요구 자와수 난도 진이 사미 조선부제도 다대지도 랜데움의 밴디 가자기 뱀벨르하게 매요 두쇼
I'd like to thank everybody who came here, especially Putila Garbache, Senator Consuelo, Shen Shu from the SFT, Kesanla, and everybody who's gathered here today. Thank you to everyone and each of you. I'm just going to take this opportunity. Last Saturday, Pakjal College ki dunai chudu ngabala candlelight vigil ni chudu chik the chewari ngala mima changma khamang ma pherochi ngaju pheme gyalang la March 3 chungi Pakjal College ki ground la September chena tangaju thada
문제는 제가 국민인 중에 세단을 어쨌든다 근데 주박이 지준이 보면 개론티 프로듀서는 차고래 걔들 좀 건다 주지 나바 토리야 가서 많이 좀 여사 박들게 콜게지 대이도 좀 미만 좀 뭐지 페로노 주야이 디닌데 가서 페바 tunja la su jin thong dirwa din de chamal shi ra ge gawo chung hlapa da tinon ya lo chunga miro saba di ki kar ding gor le bina janal ya nen se bo jing gore lo mo kultur re sung chang jana gi phil ne chi tong bre te nga zo rong ye be ki miro saba chung ne ngen theba shi da ngen chen bo ji ku bi ba dalen ji be go re song do din de sama da nga chu chu sumba pa to nga chu kim bi je yi 치밀나몰라 무슨 미만 공무원 휴지 배자 디스부디 차고서야다 디링아서 니문데 janagi 변은 두스동 현재 데리아 먼저 동네지야 동어 저기 마가기 넘지 때에 니무 진짜는 치밀나몰라 김비 지르노 쉬이
Free Tibet! Free Tibet! China out! Free Tibet! China out! China out of Tibet now! China out of Tibet now! China out of Tibet now!
China out of Tibet now!
China, China, China!
Out!
Long live! We will free Tibet! We will free Tibet! We will free Tibet! Tibet belongs to Tibetans! Tibet belongs to Tibetans! Tibet belongs to Tibetans! Learning Tibetan! Not a crime! Learning Tibetan! Not a crime! Learning Tibetan! Not a crime! Tibet was never part of China! 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 China out of Tibet now! 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 Shame on CCP! World is watching! Shame on CCP! World is watching! Shame on CCP! World is watching! We will free Tibet! 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 Free Tibet! China out! Free Tibet! China out! Free Tibet! China out! Free Tibet! China out! China out of Tibet now! 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 Tibet belongs to Tibetans! Tibet belongs to Tibetans! Tibet belongs to Tibetans! Tibet belongs to Tibetans! Stop the killing! In Tibet! Stop the genocide! In Tibet! Stop the torture! In Tibet! Allow media! In Tibet! Allow media! In Tibet! Allow media! In Tibet! Release the political prisoners now! 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 Release Shut Up Ghetto 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 now! United Nations! We want justice! United Nations! We want justice! Free Tibet! China out! Free Tibet! China out! Free Tibet! China out! China out of Tibet now! 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 China, China, China! Out, out, out! China, China, China! Out, out, out! China, China, China! Out, out, out! One, one, one! No, no, no! One, one, one! No, no, no! I said one, one, one! No, no, no! The Tibetans united! We never been defeated! Tibetans united! We never been defeated! Tibetans united! We never been defeated! Tibetans united! We will never defeat it! Tibetans united! We will never defeat it! Free Tibet! China out! Free Tibet! China out! Free Tibet! China out! China out of Tibet now! 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 Peranzen! Peranzen! Pekitapo! 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 Kamat Pene! Kamat Pene! China out of Tibet now! China out of Tibet! Free Tibet! China out! Free Tibet! China out! Free Tibet! China out! China out of Tibet now! 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 Free Turkestan! Free Turkestan! Free Turkestan! Free Turkestan! Free Hong Kong! 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 Stand up for Taiwan! Stand up for Taiwan! Stand up Taiwan! Stand up for Taiwan! Stand up Taiwan! Stand up for Taiwan! Stand up Taiwan! Free Tibet! China out! Free Tibet! China out! Free Tibet! China out! China out of Tibet now! China out of Tibet now! China out of Tibet now! China out of
Dagbo. Kemal Pöne. Kemal Pöne. Kemal Pöne. 겨울 문제 고세 틀어내 틀어봐도. 겨울 문제 고세 틀어내 틀어봐도. 겨울 문제 고세 틀어내 틀어봐도. China out of Tibet now. 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 Shame on CCP. Shame on CCP. Shame on Xi Jinping. Shame on Xi Jinping. China lies. China lies. China lies. Shame, shame.
China shame.
Shame, shame.
China shame.
Shame, shame.
China shame.
Free Hong Kong. Free Hong Kong. Free Turkestan. Free Turkestan. Free Tibet. Free Tibet. Free Tibet. Stop the killing. Stop the killing. Stop the genocide. Stop the torture. Stop the mining. No religious freedom. No religious freedom. No human rights. No human rights. Shame on communist China.
Shame on communist China.
Shame on communist China.
Shame on communist China.
Free Tibet.
China out.
Free Tibet.
China out.
Free Hong Kong.
Free Hong Kong.
Free Hong Kong.
Free Hong Kong.
Tibet belongs to. Tibet belongs to. Tibet is not. Tibet is not. Tibet was never. Tibet was never. Turkey Dagbo. Tibet belongs to. Tibet belongs to. Shame, shame. Shame, shame. Shame, shame. Shame, shame. Shame, shame. China lies. China lies. Stop the killing. Stop the genocide. Stop the torture. Stop the mining. No religious freedom. No religious freedom. No human rights. 168 people self-immolated. 168 self-immolated. Tibet belongs to. Tibet belongs to. Tibet was never. Tibet was never. Tibet was never. Tibet belongs to. Long live. Long live. Long live. Free Tibet.
China out.
Free Tibet.
China out.
Free Hong Kong. Free Hong Kong.
Free Hong Kong.
Free East Turkestan. Free East Turkestan. Free Taiwan. Free Taiwan. Free Tibet. China, China, China. China, China, China. China, China, China. When? When? Release the political prisoners now. Release the political prisoners now. Release the pension lama now. Release the pension lama now. Shame on China. Shame on China. Wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up. UNO. UNO. Canada. Save Tibet. Canada. Canada. World leaders. Stand up for Tibet. World leaders. World leaders. Shame, shame. Shame, shame. Shame, shame. Shame, shame. China lies. China lies. China lies. Tibet belongs to. Tibet belongs to. Tibet was never. Tibet was never. Tibet belongs to. Free Hong Kong. Free Hong Kong. Free Taiwan. Free Taiwan. Free East Turkestan. 168 people self-immolated for freedom. 168 people self-immolated for free Tibet. Free Tibet. China, China, China. China, China, China. WK 국민들다 China, China, China. China, China, China. Shame on China. Shame on China. Shame on China. Stop killing. Stop the genocide. Stop the torture. Stop the mining. Stop the mining. No religious freedom. No religious freedom. No human rights. No human rights. World leaders. World leaders. World leaders. Shame, shame. Shame, shame. Turkey double. Turkey double. Gamma pene. Gamma pene. Gawarumoji kunse chiloni chilobado. Gawarumoji kunse chiloni chilobado. Gawarumoji kunse chiloni chilobado. Long live. Long live. Free Tibet. Free Tibet. China out of Tibet now. Shame on Xi Jinping. Shame on Xi Jinping. Shame on Communist China. Shame on Communist China. Pekalo. 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 Pekalo.
이시라 뜨지노 근데 수지하다 같은 사모사이트의 대부분도 팀에서 미마서 청가마지로 쉬었다 난들 때는 저 대자다 때는 저기 포스터에서 인지는 같이 텔셔로지 참아철로리 지금 절 비셔 제부고래 미마나 봐서 드린데 배박 참아라야 빈타파 뜨지노 쉬어야 비자로 비자로 비로테 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 비자로 비자로 잘해보지 비자로 비자로 뜨지나 참아라 뜨지나 근데 그 뒤쪽에 좀비 소망을 주대 담아봐도 유로노 소망서야 달래가 먹어래 근데 자다파 버스 소망 팀단 헤로노 쉬어이 나발 이제 참아라 뜨지게 뜨지나 쉬어이